Hey viewers, and thank you so much indeed for joining us on Get Well, Stay Well on Revelation TV. You're joined by me, Cyrus Fernando, and as always, delighted to be joined by our lovely Felicity. How are you?
Hi there, so I'm absolutely fine. Looking forward to our program today, as I always do. And we're talking about the sacred plant.
Okay.
And when I first started seeing a film was being made on the sacred plant, I thought, oh, what's that going to be? And my surprise when it turned out to be hemp was considerable.
Wow.
Because I have never used anything like that in my life.
Yeah.
I've just been so warned off by awful stories of what it's done for people.
Yes.
And I was really interested when Ty Bollinger, who I trust so much on, you know, The Truth About Cancer, and Chris Walk, who got well when I did as well, and all these people coming out with this film on the wonderful properties of the green hemp plant. So, of course, I couldn't wait to start researching on that as well. They've made the film, which has been shown like a mini docu-series, as The Truth About Cancer was. And I've discovered that on the NHS in England, they're now using hemp or cannabis or marijuana, I suppose. You know, the name marijuana comes from Marie and Juan.
Okay.
And they tried to make a different name for it to cannabis because in America years ago, the farmers were growing cannabis. They could pay their tax in cannabis. All the founding fathers grew cannabis.
Yes.
So, you know, then this thing came out about marijuana being so bad, and the CIA actually tried to malign it, and because it was curing so much. It was a plant that people used. It's one of God's green plants, of course.
Right.
So when Big Pharma really seized control of the medical establishment about 1937, they started really disparaging it and maligning it and saying how bad it was. And of course, if you misuse it and abuse it and start smoking this stuff, you know, people
Well, that's the point there, because with some of the viewers might be shocked to think we're talking about marijuana on Christian television because we know it as an illegal substance, so to speak. But to what extent can that help us health-wise?
It's only been illegal, Si, in the countries that Big Pharma have controlled. So in South America, in Spain, for instance, for many years. And of course, all over the world, it was used. The hemp plant was used. You can juice it, and you know, it grows like a weed. I think it was known as weed. So, yeah, it's been around forever. Of course, it's a green plant.
What effects does it do to? What does it do to our system?
Well, it takes away pain and it can heal people. We have cannabinoid receptors in the brain.
Okay.
That nothing else will actually satisfy those cannabinoid receptors apart from the cannabis.
Yes.
And it's very sedative, which is why people get dopey, I suppose, and lay around with it when they're abusing it. But medically, it's being used so much for children with epilepsy, for people with MS, for people with intractable pain, for cancer. It relaxes the body. And anyway, it's being used on the NHS now.
And what are the forms of taking marijuana or hemp?
They make an oil, which is for sale in the herbal shops, certainly here in Spain. I was surprised, you know, to see on the counter there were little droplets of the oil, and people juice it as well. So you can grow it in a garden and juice it, put it in with your green juices.
And do you straight away, if you're applying the oils or you're putting it in your juice, do you feel the difference straight away, or how does it work?
It depends which kind you have. There's the THC and the CBD, and the CBD has no psychotropic effect at all. So that's the one that's used basically in medicine. But there are the two different kinds. It's from the sativa plant. It's really interesting. And of course, it's been illegal to grow it and to use it because they're trying to control it. But the interesting thing is that Big Pharma are now trying to make a synthetic form of it, which they'll make loads of money out of.
Right, okay.
So they're trying to ban the natural thing. It's just the same as beetroots or whatever, apples, you know, genetically modify something and then make a lot of money out of it.
Okay, well, let's have a look at our first video. This is talking about the sacred plant.
Cannabis is a fascinating topic. You know, I grew up taught that marijuana was an illegal drug, right? That it was a gateway drug, and it was demonized. on TV ads and talks given at my school. And but when I got to be in high school and even in college, I actually started researching on my own, and I learned that cannabis is one of the most versatile plants on earth. I mean, not only as a textile, but it has incredible nutritional value. And then in recent years, we've just seen all of these testimonials start to percolate up from people who've healed with cannabis. And my thinking about the plant changed completely.
There's so much misinformation about this plant. I was the most guilty of assuming that this plant is only recreational and only utilized by those wanting to get high. And this couldn't be further from the truth. I learned this through my path with my family member, and have found through my own study that there is so much medical information behind this plant. It's an anti-inflammatory. I could go on. The list goes on and on and on. But connecting the plant to the recreational use only, it couldn't be further from the truth. It's very medical.
It's troubling to me to see that we're still being misled about this plant. People don't realize that one of the first Model Ts that Henry Ford developed was made from hemp fiber, and it ran on hemp fuel. People don't realize that one of the first versions of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution was actually drafted on hemp paper. People don't realize that in the colony of Virginia between 1683, I think, and the early 1700s, you could literally pay your taxes with hemp. And for a while, you were required to grow it. You were required to grow it because it was such a beneficial crop. People don't realize that all the founding fathers had farms that grew hemp. So all this is history that's been hidden from us. And we're not taught this. All we're taught is that it's an evil weed, but we're not taught about the medicinal uses for it. We're not taught that cannabis is actually an amazingly powerful superfood. You know, that's why this docu-series that you're doing is so important, because it's going to make people aware that there's more than just one use for this plant.
This plant actually represents one of the greatest threats to the medical industrial establishment because it actually has hundreds of health benefits, each of which competes with a pharmaceutical that is generally producing millions, if not billions of dollars annually. So when you have a plant that grows freely, as if a weed, in your backyard, threatening $1 trillion plus industry, you're going to see an irrational response, which is presently the vilification and even criminalization of its possession and use as a healing agent.
Very interesting video there. Thanks so much, Felicity, for sharing that with us. And it's interesting what Chris Walk said is when he grew up, and like we all did, we thought about marijuana, and we thought it's an illegal substance, need to stay away from it. Because of the side effects that it can cause you, you're unfamiliar, you don't know what you're doing and everything else like that. And now we're seeing the health benefits, very educational.
Yes, I mean, when my children were at school, the police would come round and show the parents some hemp, which was like sort of tobacco, and it was handed round and they said, now you must smell it and then you'll know if your children are getting into anything like this, And so, of course, I had seen terrible things. I was a Samaritan for many years, and I'd seen people who were hooked on smoking recreational drugs and seen the devastation that happened. So, of course, I was dead against anything like that.
How do you think that is affecting our youth of today who are addicted to marijuana, for example, in the way that their lifestyle, and if they rely so much on marijuana to get them through, they haven't got any health problems, any health conditions, but they're smoking the marijuana every single day.
Are they?
I'm just saying, we see there's so many.
I don't know.
There are so many young people that we see that have so much access to drugs, and it's just scary. We open our newspapers, the amount of young people, the amount of teenagers that are into all this marijuana and everything else. It's scary times that we're living in, Felicity. For example, let me ask you, how do parents cope with something like this?
Well, we were, just taught by the police to watch out if, you could smell all this funny stuff on your children when they came back from parties or something. And I never did. I mean, my children were not into it. I think, they were quite intelligent children and they didn't want to get into that kind of thing. So it wasn't a problem in our household, but Yeah, I suppose it is. In America particularly, you know, you hear that there's a sort of drug culture, and probably with the nightclubs. And luckily, my children are now, you know, well grown up. And so, but then I've got the grandchildren to think about.
Yeah,
and of course it is illegal, and so it should be.
Absolutely.
But thank goodness there is a use for this green plant that God has given us.
Can you ever see it being legalized because of the health, the ways that it can improve our health?
Well, it is legalized in many states of America now, and it's legalized in.
Will it ever
in
remove
UK.
that stigma that we have about marijuana, that
Well,
we
I
need to
think
stay away from it?
It's a matter of education, isn't it? You know, it's like we educate about the apricot kernels, helping people with cancer, and in my case, curing really bad cancer. So it's all about education. And as you say, all the information is out there if people will just do their research. But you know, I think people like to go to a doctor and think that the doctor knows best and that he will guide them into what they should do. And so they blindly follow without thinking it through, because these things, all the truth is coming out so fast with internet now that sometimes the doctors haven't got time to keep up with it, quite honestly. And if people are watching YouTubes and they're watching the news and they're watching all the latest things that are coming out, they're very, very switched on.
And what are the health conditions that the sacred plant can help?
Virtually anything.
Okay.
I mean, particularly MS.
Okay.
And that's multiple sclerosis, of
Yeah.
course. And cancer, any kind of intractable pain.
In what way? Explain the process.
Well, you can put the oil on the skin, apparently rub it into joints, put the oil on to heal the skin as well. So, and then people take the drops under the tongue. I know a friend of mine who's very ill with cancer at the moment in Spain, and she's being given the cannabis by her doctors, by her oncologists, to try and reverse this thing for her. She's fought a long battle for many, many years now, and this is a sort of last-ditch attempt to try and save her life. So, you know, we're all praying that it's going to work for her. And it's just really interesting that God has put all these plants here on earth for us. And I think that every plant can be used for good. And it's just interesting to bring this to the attention of our get well, stay well people.
Yeah. And we often talk about plants. We talk about nuts, seeds, and green plants.
And the green plants.
Exactly.
Yes,
and it's the healthy diet as well, isn't
Yeah.
it? That's
And
so important.
Apparently it grows like a weed. That's why it's known as weed.
Okay.
So it grows like a weed everywhere. And it's, you know, very prolific, I suppose. And I think people bring it over from Morocco particularly, do they? You know, you hear about drug running and this sort of thing. So I don't know. But anyway, it's now medically accepted in most states.
Okay. Now we're talking about the nutrition side of things as well, and the healthy diet. What are the best foods for our healthy diet? What should we be eating and what should we be staying away from?
Well, some oats in the morning would be a really good idea to start.
Yeah.
So if people want to have a more substantial breakfast, you know, all I want is my juices basically, and sometimes an egg, maybe an organic egg. But if people want to have the good old Scots oats, you know, that the Scots, of course, do it with water.
Yeah.
And as long as we cut out the cow's milk, then we can do a nut milk with porridge, and we can make the most delicious porridge, which is great if people want a more substantial breakfast before they go out to work.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we look at our diet, we live a very busy lifestyle, and we think we need something quite simple and easy. And I guess you can get that as well from juicing and blending and everything like that. That's quite simple to do as well, isn't it?
Much easier than doing the eggs and bacon and all the things that I used to do for my children, because I thought that was the way to go, you know.
Yeah.
That's how I'd been brought up, that you had a good breakfast before you went out, especially being married to an RAF pilot, because it was the pilot's breakfast and you had the eggs and bacon and fried bread and tomatoes and everything else. But now I'd rather just have my juices.
So give us an idea, Felicity, what is your average day, your diet?
Well, that's easy. Juices, basically, juices through the day.
And what would you put in your juice?
Well, I'd try to do rainbow juices. So I'd start with the orange juice. Or I actually prefer the satsumas,
Okay.
because they're not as acid as the oranges. And then you go on to a carrot and apple juice. which is wonderful. I really got well on the carrot and apple juice years ago. A green juice, of course, and then you can have a beetroot juice, that lovely dark red. You can have the blue juices from blueberries and blackberries. So I think that God has provided these rainbow foods for us with a message, you know, drink the rainbow, which is absolutely lovely. So, and then big salads, of course, and vegetables. I love leeks and carrots and onions and garlic, loads of garlic, because that's so good for us. So that's my kind of food. And if I do go out, you know, we have the Revelation party or something, I'll eat what other people are having because it's fun for me. And I think it's good for us every now and again to go back to, you know, eating the sort of Western diet. I think we should do that.
Now, when you say the Western diet, up until what extent would you eat the Western diet?
Well, I think, you know, I was brought up on meat and 2 veg or fish and 2 veg for every meal.
Yes.
Because, you know, you didn't feel you'd had a proper meal unless you had heavy protein.
Right.
What we've now discovered is that the best protein, which is well assimilated in the body, is actually from the green plant. So people like Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, the great cardiologist, Dr. Dean Ornish, these people who we feature on our courses, know that in fact we're better without the animal protein. But if people want to have a little bit of that, you know, then as long as they're not fighting cancer as I was, and then I couldn't afford to eat animal protein.
What would you say if people are health conscious and they're obviously saying we need to take our health seriously, but we'd like a treat every now and again? What would you say is a nice treat?
Well, probably fish.
Okay.
Probably fish, although the seas are very polluted. You know, Sky is doing this huge campaign at the moment with the plastics in the sea, and the fish are all full of these terrible little tiny bits of plastic. Little nanoparticulates. Yes, absolutely. So,
but it's more about the awareness, the health awareness, more importantly, and just being health conscious, isn't it? As long as we're health conscious, we're aware of what we're eating and what we shouldn't be eating. It's having that balance at the same time. You've got to be quite real as well under the circumstances, but it is the awareness.
Well, you know, when we go back to God's diet, the herbs, the fruits, vegetables, seeds, and nuts, and green plant, we do actually get well and we stay well. So that's the basis. Stick with that and you won't go far wrong.
Now, we've got a video coming up talking about overnight oats, Felicity. Why did you choose that?
Well, I thought it was a bit of fun to see something that people could prepare the night before, because people say to me, oh, I'm too busy to juice first thing in the morning, you know, I'm rushing off on the underground or the bus or something. And so here's something that people can prepare the night before. It's delicious and very filling.
Brilliant. Let's have a look at it. Overnight oats.
Hey guys, it's Liesl Jane. Today I'm going to show you how to make overnight oats, and I'm going to show you 3 really easy ways to make them. I always make overnight oats when I know I'm going to have a really busy day the next day and it takes less than 2 minutes to put all the ingredients together, and then I've got a healthy breakfast for the next morning and I don't even have to think about it. I can just eat it and go. These recipes are all completely dairy-free, gluten-free and sugar-free, so they're really healthy and I just really love all of them. So I'm really excited to show them to you. Let's get started. First, we're gonna make blueberry lemon overnight oats. It may sound fancy, but it's a really simple recipe and it's totally delicious. It's definitely one of my favorite overnight oats recipes. So what you'll need is half a cup of whole rolled oats. I'm going to add that to a jar. You can also use a bowl if you don't have a jar. Now I'm adding 2 teaspoons of chia seeds. These add good protein, healthy fats, and they also bind all of the ingredients together to make a nice porridge because they absorb water really well. And then half a cup of water, and then just give that a little mix. Now I'll add a pinch of cinnamon and a pinch of ground vanilla powder. This is optional, but they give it extra flavor and they're full of antioxidants. And then 1 tablespoon of fresh lemon juice to give it a lemony flavor. But if you want to skip this step and just do plain blueberry oats, that'll be really good too. I often do plain blueberry, but blueberry lemon oats are really amazing. So I'm adding half a cup of frozen blueberries. You can also use fresh, but I think frozen blueberries work really nicely for this. I always like to add some nuts or nut butter to my oats for extra protein. Today I'm using 14 raw almonds. This goes really nicely with the blueberry lemon flavor. And then this is totally optional, but you can add 1 to 2 teaspoons of 100% pure maple syrup to make it a little sweeter, or you can just add it to taste. I don't always do this, it really depends on what kind of fruit I'm using to sweeten the oats, but because I added the lemon juice, I'll definitely have some sweetener. And now the oats just need to soak in the fridge overnight. The reason that you need to leave the oats to soak overnight is so that the oats and the chia seeds can soak up the water and soften. It's really yummy. So I'll just cover the jar with a lid and put it in the fridge. And when I wake up in the morning, my oats are ready to eat. And I don't even need to think about making breakfast. It's perfect for a busy day. I'm just adding the oats to a bowl. You can see the oats and the chia seeds have absorbed the water really nicely and it's become a porridge. And I'm topping it with 1 flat teaspoon of unsweetened almond butter that I've already measured out. I don't always add the extra nut butter on top if I've already got nuts mixed in, but sometimes a little swirl of nut butter on top just gives it that extra something, and it looks really pretty too. But you don't even have to put the oats into a separate bowl. You can literally just eat it out of the jar with a spoon.
That's a lovely little video there. So the girl's so young and vibrant, and she's just teaching people, and that's what it is. It's reaching out to the younger audience and younger people to educate them about health and staying healthy and having nice, lovely, healthy snacks.
And she's a lovely South African girl as well, so that takes me back to my youth in South Africa. And I think she's fun. And it's great to have young people doing these things because I think it encourages our younger viewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a lovely little breakfast she'd made there. So that's really great. Fantastic.
Excellent, and it's so important to have a healthy breakfast to help you start your day, because that really helps you get through it, right?
Well, the great thing is to rehydrate the body in the morning. That is so vital.
What do we need to do? Is it just drinking water? What do we do?
It's drinking water. You could have a little bicarbonate of soda in that water, which will alkalize the body. And for you guys here in the studio with lots of electromagnetic radiation around you, you need to alkalize.
Yeah.
So you can get some baking soda or bicarbonate of soda or baking powder, as long as it's not got aluminium in it. And you just put half a teaspoon of that in with your glass of water, swirl it around so it's like a slightly white milky drink, and drink that down before you go off, basically, Si, before you leave the house, just because the body needs hydration. You don't necessarily need food at that time, especially if you're in a hurry and you're preparing for our mornings, you've got a lot of tension going on around you. So maybe you don't feel like eating, but you must drink. You know, our blood needs to be kept nice and hydrated, otherwise we get thick blood.
Yeah.
That's not a clever thing to do to the body.
Yes.
Not at all clever. Our eyes, our eyes have water, everything, our mucous membranes throughout the body need to be lubricated. Otherwise, we're going to be in big problems.
And what do you think about people who sometimes have toast for breakfast, wheat? What are your thoughts on that? They say, okay, I'm having a brown bread, or I'm having whatever it is.
Well,
what would you say?
The toast turns to sugar in the body. So it's really empty nutrition. It's filled you up a little bit. You've got something in the tummy.
Yeah.
But the bread itself, and a lot of people are now allergic to the gluten, of course, and the stuff that it's all been sprayed with, the glyphosate, the bread is being sprayed.
Yeah.
The bread is not the biblical bread that we know from Jesus' day.
It's interesting. How has food changed or evolved over the years in the way of all our diets? How has that changed?
Well,
are we becoming more health conscious, or is it more processed foods?
Well, it depends. I mean, people have been into all the processed stuff, and that was more in my generation, I think, when we went into microwaves, you went into the TV dinners, and suddenly it was so easy and everyone was seduced by this. I think people are now waking up from that. We've now got quite a lot of people interested in health. There's more health restaurants, and I think people are becoming aware because people have become so ill. But I do want to put that point over about people having soups, having juices. Keep hydrated. That is so important because the whole body even our bones, everything in our body needs liquid content put in.
I mean, water. Shall we say, take water as an example?
Yeah.
What is the ideal amount of water we should be drinking?
Well, it depends on your size. Obviously,
Yes.
you need more than me.
Yeah.
It's the type of water is the more important
Right.
to get clean water that
Yeah.
isn't covered with the heavy metals and the chlorine and the fluoride and all the rest of the stuff that's put in. So this is why I say to people, you know, get a distiller because it looks just like a kettle. It's got a carafe next to it, and overnight we make our distilled water so that we put in 4 litres, and it comes out distilled drop by drop, but it's absolutely scientifically pure. So that will help us detox from the heavy metals, from the stuff that's been sprayed, from anything that we've been contaminated with, because we're surrounded with pollution from the air, from the water, from the food, from our thoughts as well, you know,
Right,
toxic thoughts and stress.
The mental side of things is always intriguing, talking about the psychological aspects of things and how our mind works.
Yes.
And our minds can get polluted depending on what we see and what we watch, films or anything else like that as well. How important is it to keep our minds strong? And I guess this is where we talk about Jesus Christ, the importance of having Christ in our life, to have that, to keep our minds clean and at peace.
To have a few good scriptures, really important, and live on those scriptures. You know, I shall not die, but live and proclaim what the Lord has done. And the Lord lifts me up by his righteous right hand. You know, this sort of thing. You have to have something really positive and uplifting, and to base your life on that. Otherwise, you can get sucked down into this sort of depression and into the contamination, I would say, of modern life.
Yeah.
And so to keep well hydrated is really important, and to keep the good body chemistry.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're suddenly given bad news, you feel your body
That's exactly it.
going right down. But if you get a lovely phone call and good news, you know, you're on top of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
And so your blood and everything in your body responds to that.
Excellent. Felicity, thank you so much indeed for joining us. Thank you also to our lovely viewers. Do remember we have a catch-up service on our website. So if you want to watch us again, watch the programme again, then log on to www.revelationtv.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. Simply search Revelation TV. Felicity mentioned her favourite scriptures earlier. I'm going to go with, we live by faith and not by sight. And it's so important, have that relationship with Jesus Christ. Ask him to come into your life today and see what happens. Take care, God bless, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.